Part 1. Induction. Close your eyes, let your body become heavy, your shoulders dropping, your hands open and still, your breath slow and even. Tonight, I want to tell you a story about smallness, about what it means to be small in a world that is very, very large, about courage that does not wait for the right size, about a boy no bigger than your thumb, who decided one day that the world was worth seeing. Let the story carry you. Part 2. The Prayer. Long, long ago, in a village nestled between green mountains, there lived an old man and an old woman. They had been married for many, many years. Their hair was white. Their faces were soft with age. Their hands, when they held each other, fit together the way hands do when they have been holding each other for a long time. They were good people, hardworking, honest, kind to their neighbors, generous with what little they had. But there was one sorrow in their lives, one quiet, unspoken ache. They had no children. Every morning before the sun was fully up, the old woman would walk to the shrine at the edge of the village. She would clap her hands twice. She would bow her head and she would pray, not for wealth, not for health, not for anything for herself. She would pray for a child, just one, any child at all. She didn't care if the child was strong or weak, clever or simple, tall or short, any child. She did this every morning for many years. The old man watched her go. Every morning. He never asked what she prayed for. He already knew. And so he prayed too in his own quiet way, not at the shrine, just to the air as he walked to the fields. Just a soft, wordless hoping that sometimes felt like prayer. The years passed, and then, one morning, something changed. Part 3. The Arrival. The old woman was returning from the shrine. The sky was pale gold. The dew was still on the grass. The village was just beginning to wake. She was almost home when she heard it. A sound, very small, high and thin and clear, like the sound a cricket makes, but not quite. She stopped. She looked around. Nothing. She took another step. The sound again. She looked down, and there, on the path in front of her, sitting with his legs crossed, as calmly as if he had been waiting, was a boy. He was perfectly formed. Dark eyes, black hair, tiny hands folded in his lap. But he was no bigger than her thumb. She stared at him for a long moment. He looked back at her without fear. "Good morning," he said. His voice was small but clear, steady, somehow much larger than it should have been. The old woman's hands flew to her mouth. Her eyes filled with tears. She crouched down very carefully and looked at him more closely. He was real. She could see the rise and fall of his tiny chest, the brightness of his eyes, the way his hair moved in the morning breeze. "Are you ours?" she whispered. The boy looked at her for a moment. "I think so," he said. She reached out her hand very gently, and he stepped onto her palm. He weighed almost nothing, but his warmth, small as he was real. She carried him home. Part 4. The Naming. The old man was at the door when she returned. He saw her face first, saw the tears, saw the way she was holding her hands, cupped together, with the particular care of someone carrying something precious. He came to her. She opened her hands. For a long moment he simply stared. Then slowly he began to smile. Not the polite smile of a man trying to appear calm, the real kind. The kind that starts somewhere deep and works its way outward, the kind that changes the whole face. "Hello," he said to the tiny boy. "Hello," said the boy. "What shall we call you?" the old man asked. The boy thought about this for a moment. He looked up at the old man with those steady, dark eyes. "Issun-boshi," he said. 1-inch boy. The old man looked at his wife. His wife looked at the old man. "Issun-boshi," the old man said softly. "Welcome home." Part 5. Growing Up. Issun-boshi grew, but not in the way other children grow. While the children of the village shot up like bamboo after rain, growing taller every season, outgrowing their clothes, losing their baby teeth, developing the long limbs and changing voices of young people. Issun-boshi stayed exactly as he was, 1-inch tall. His parents worried at first. They asked the village elder. They consulted the priest at the shrine. They wondered if they had done something wrong, if the prayer had been answered in some crooked way. But Issun-boshi himself never seemed troubled by it. He moved through the world with a matter-of-fact acceptance that his parents found, eventually, more comforting than any reassurance. He simply was what he was, and he made the best of it. He learned to navigate the house with impressive skill. He could climb the leg of the table as easily as other children climbed trees. He slept in a small bowl that his mother lined with the softest cloth she could find. He ate from a thimble. He bathed in a teacup. He learned to read by standing on the open pages of his father's books. He learned arithmetic by counting grains of rice. He learned about the world through stories and through the window, watching the village go about its life. The village children were curious about him at first. Some were unkind. Children can be unkind without meaning to be, and sometimes meaning to be. They called him names. They tried to pick him up without asking. One boy once tried to put him in a jar. Issun-boshi dealt with all of this with remarkable composure. He was small, yes, but he was quick. And he was clever. And he had underneath his calm exterior a stubbornness that his mother recognized as her own. He was not easy to bully. He was not easy to overlook either. People found somehow that when Issun-boshi spoke, they listened. Perhaps because his voice carried a quiet certainty, perhaps because you had to pay close attention to hear him, perhaps simply because there was something about him, something in the set of his shoulders and the steadiness of his gaze, that commanded attention regardless of his size. The years passed. Issun-boshi grew older, 1-inch tall, and one evening, sitting on the windowsill, watching the road that led away from the village toward the distant city, he felt something, a pulling, a restlessness, a sense that the world he had been watching from windows and doorways for all his life was out there, waiting. He watched the road for a long time. Then he went to find his parents. Part 6. The conversation. They were sitting by the fire. His mother was sewing. His father was carving a piece of wood, slowly, the way he did when he was thinking about something. Issun-boshi crossed the floor, climbed his father's sleeve to the armrest of the chair, sat down. His parents looked at him. They could always tell when something was coming. "I want to go to the capital," Issun-boshi said. The fire crackled. His mother's hands stilled on her sewing. "The capital," his father said slowly. "Yes, I want to serve a great Lord. I want to see the world. I want to—" He paused, searching for the right words. "I want to find out what I can do, what I am capable of. I won't know if I stay here." His parents looked at each other. That particular look that passes between two people who have been together long enough to have entire conversations without speaking. His mother set down her sewing. "You are very small," she said gently, not unkindly, just honestly. "I know," Issun-boshi said. "The road to the capital is long. There are dangers." "I know that too. There are people who would not see you, who might—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Step on me," Issun-boshi said matter-of-factly. "Yes, I've thought about that." Another silence. His father cleared his throat. "What would you use for a boat?" he asked. "The river runs fast." "A bowl," Issun-boshi said. "One of the lacquered ones, and a chopstick for a paddle." His father looked at his mother. His mother looked at his father. "And for protection?" his father asked. "A needle," Issun-boshi said, "in a sheath made from a length of straw." His father was quiet for a long time. He turned the piece of wood over in his hands. "You've thought about this," he said. "For a long time," Issun-boshi said. His father set down the wood. "Then you should go," he said quietly. His mother made a small sound. His father looked at her. "He has thought about it carefully. He is ready, and—" He paused. "He has always been more than his size. We have always known that." His mother was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. She rose. She went to the kitchen. She packed the smallest, most perfect meal she could: rice, a piece of dried fish, a tiny sweet. Everything wrapped in the smallest cloth she owned. When she brought it to him, she did not cry. She had decided not to. But her hands shook very slightly as she set it beside him. "Come back to us," she said. "I will," Issun-boshi said. And the way he said it left no room for doubt. Part 7. The Journey. He set out before dawn. The bowl sat on the river's surface like a leaf. The chopstick paddle was awkward at first, then gradually something he got used to. The river moved swiftly in places, and he had to work hard, his tiny arms driving the paddle with surprising strength. The world from the surface of the river was extraordinary. The banks rose on either side like cliffs. The reeds were forests. The frogs that watched him pass were enormous. A heron standing in the shallows was taller than a temple. He paddled on. The days and nights blurred together. He saw things he had never imagined: a fox slipping through the shadows at dusk, a field of fireflies at night, so many that the darkness itself seemed to glow, a dawn so red and vast it seemed to fill the entire world. He He ate sparingly from his mother's parcel. He slept in his bowl, pulled to the bank, hidden among reeds. He talked to himself sometimes, not from loneliness exactly, but because the world was so large and so full that it needed commenting on. That is a very large mountain, he would say. Or, that storm is going to be a problem. Or, I wonder if that frog has somewhere to be. Weeks passed, and then, one morning, he rounded a bend in the river and saw it. The capital. It rose before him in the early light, towers and gates and rooftops, more buildings than he had ever imagined, smoke rising from 1,000 fires, the sound of bells and voices, and the particular low hum of a great city going about its business. Issun-boshi stopped paddling. He sat in his bowl for a long moment, looking. Well, he said to himself, there it is. He paddled to the bank. He tied his bowl to a reed. He tucked his needle sword into its straw sheath. He took a deep breath and walked into the city. Part 8. The Great Lord's House. The city was overwhelming. The feet of the people were like falling trees. The horses were mountains. The carts were buildings in motion. But Issun-boshi moved through it all with the careful, practiced skill of someone who had spent a lifetime navigating a world built for people much larger than himself. He dodged. He waited. He climbed when he needed to. He found the edges and margins of things and moved through them quickly. He asked directions. This required some creativity. He had to climb to where people could hear him. He had to repeat himself. He had to be patient with the staring and the startled reactions, but he got where he was going. The house of the great Lord Sanjo was the largest building Issun-boshi had ever seen. Its gates were made of wood so old it had turned black. Its garden was a world unto itself. He stood at the gate for a moment. Then he walked up to the guard, climbed the guard's sandal to be heard, and announced himself. "My name is Issun-boshi," he said. "I have come from the countryside to offer my service to Lord Sanjo." The guard looked down at him. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the guard, to his credit, kept his face completely straight and said, "Wait here." He waited. Eventually he was taken inside. He stood in the great hall on the polished wooden floor, and Lord Sanjo looked down at him from his cushion with an expression of careful neutrality. They regarded each other for a moment. "You wish to serve me," Lord Sanjo said. "Yes, my lord." "You are—" Lord Sanjo paused diplomatically. "Very small," Issun-boshi said. "Yes, my lord, I am aware." "What can you do?" Issun-boshi drew his needle sword. It caught the light. He moved through a series of precise, controlled movements, quick, clean, exact. The hall was very quiet. "I am fast," Issun-boshi said, sheathing the needle. "I am quiet. I go places larger people cannot. I see things larger people miss. And I am—" He paused. "I am not afraid." Lord Sanjo was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You may stay." Part 9. Life in the Great House. And so Issun-boshi entered the service of Lord Sanjo. He was given duties that suited his particular attributes. He carried messages between rooms without being seen. He found things that had been lost in the corners and crevices of the great house. He served as a companion to the Lord's daughter, the Princess Renko, who was the only person in the house who treated his size as entirely unremarkable. She was perhaps 12 years old, serious and quiet and bookish. She had a habit of sitting very still and reading for hours, which Issun-boshi respected enormously. She let him sit on her shoulder while she read, and would sometimes read aloud in a soft voice, and Issun-boshi would listen. They became friends in the quiet way that two people who are both a little apart from the world become friends. She never asked him about his size. He never asked about the faint loneliness he sometimes saw in her eyes. They simply kept each other company, and that was enough. The seasons changed. Issun-boshi's reputation in the house grew slowly, not because anyone made a fuss about him, but because people noticed over time that things ran more smoothly when he was around, that problems got solved, that lost things got found, that the small, invisible difficulties of a large household were being quietly addressed. He was precise. He was diligent. He was, above all, reliable. Lord Sanjo came to trust him. This was, Issun-boshi understood, more valuable than any title. Winter came, then spring, then another summer. He was happy, not in an explosive, dramatic way, in the quiet, solid way of a person who has found the place where they belong. He wrote to his parents, small, careful letters on the tiniest paper he could find. He folded them into the smallest shapes possible. He arranged for them to be carried by travelers going west. He received letters back. His father's handwriting, enormous to him, each character the size of a door, telling him small, ordinary things about the village. His mother's letters, shorter but warmer, always ending with the same words. Come back to us. He always wrote back, I will. Part 10. The Demons. It was late summer when it happened. Issun-boshi and Princess Renko were walking in the garden. She was teaching him the names of the flowers. He sat on her shoulder. She pointed. He repeated the names, committing them to memory. They were in the far corner of the garden, where the old plum trees grew when the demons appeared. There were two of them. Oni. They came over the wall without warning, large, terrible, their horns catching the afternoon light, their eyes red as fire, each one carrying a heavy iron club. The princess froze. Issun-boshi drew his needle. One of the demons noticed him and laughed, a sound like boulders colliding. What is this? It said, peering down at him. A little toy? Stand behind me, Issun-boshi said to the princess. His voice was completely steady. She moved behind him. The demon laughed again and reached down to pick him up. Issun-boshi moved. He was, as he had told Lord Sanjo, fast. He ran up the demon's arm. He drove his needle into the demon's palm. The demon roared and shook its arm, but Issun-boshi had already leapt to the other one. He climbed it like a tree, driving the needle as he went. Precise targeted points that caused maximum pain and confusion while doing no lasting damage. The demon stumbled, howled, swatted at him and missed, but then one of them caught him. A massive hand closed around him. The demon brought him close to its face. One enormous red eye regarded him. You little, it began. Issun-boshi drove his needle directly into the demon's eye. The demon dropped him with a shriek that shook the walls. Both demons crashed through the garden gate and fled. The garden was silent. Issun-boshi stood in the grass. He was breathing hard. His hands were shaking slightly. He realized, perhaps more frightened than he had appeared. He turned. The princess was standing very still, her face pale, her eyes wide. Then she crossed the garden and crouched down in front of him. "Are you hurt?" she asked. "No," he said. She looked at him for a long moment. "You knew you might be killed?" she said. "Yes," he said. "You did it anyway." "Yes?" She sat down in the grass across from him. "Why?" she asked. Not challenging, genuinely asking. Issun-boshi thought about it. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said finally, and because he paused. "Because being small doesn't mean being less. I have always known that. I just needed to show it to myself more than anyone." The princess was quiet for a long time. Then she noticed something in the grass. Part 11. The Magic Mallet. Near where the demons had fled, caught in the roots of the old plum tree, was a small mallet. It was made of some pale, smooth wood. It had a red cord tied to the handle. It hummed very faintly when the princess picked it up. She brought it to Issun-boshi. "What is this?" she asked. Issun-boshi looked at it. He felt the faint vibration from where he stood. "The demons must have dropped it," he said. I think it might be a magic mallet. Uchi de no kozuchi, the mallet of fortune." The princess turned it over in her hands. "They say," she said slowly, "if you wave it and make a wish." She looked at Issun-boshi. He looked at the mallet. A long silence. "Wave it," he said. "What shall I wish for?" He was quiet for a moment. He thought about his parents, about their small house at the edge of the village, about the years of prayers at the shrine, about the love that had made room for him exactly as he was. He thought about Lord Sanjo's house, about the quiet friendship of the princess, about the years of careful, patient work. He thought about the demon's eye and his hand shaking afterward, about being small in a world built for larger people, about the things he had found in the margins and edges, about the view from a shoulder, from a window, from the surface of a river. He thought about everything he had seen and done and been. He had no regrets, but "Wish that I were tall," he said. The princess raised the mallet. She waved it once. She wished. Part 12. The Transformation. It happened slowly, not all at once, not with a flash of light or a sound of thunder. Slowly, like a plant pushing through soil, like ice becoming water, like the sky becoming light. Issun-boshi grew. He felt it first in his feet, a warmth, a solidity. The grass beneath him, which had always been a forest, became grass. Then his legs, the world dropping away, or rather, him rising through it. The old plum tree, which had been a mountain, becoming a tree. Then his chest, his shoulders, his arms. He stood up straighter and straighter and straighter. The princess stood before him watching, her eyes very wide, the mallet still in her hand. Issun-boshi kept growing until he stopped. He stood in the garden, full height, a young man, broad-shouldered, strong, his eyes, still those steady dark eyes, his face, the same face, just larger. He looked at his hands, large hands, the hands of a man. He looked at the garden. The trees were trees. The wall was a wall. The sky was simply the sky. He took a breath. It felt different, larger, deeper. He turned to the princess. She was looking up at him now. He looked down at her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Issun-boshi said, "I'm going to need different clothes." And the princess laughed. It was the first time he had heard her laugh. It was a good sound. Part 13. What followed? Lord Sanjo came running at the sound of the demon's retreat. He found his daughter standing in the garden, laughing, beside a young man he had never seen before, and it took some time to explain. But Lord Sanjo was a man who had watched Issun-boshi solve the unsolvable for years. He was not in the end particularly surprised that Issun-boshi had managed to grow. He gave Issun-boshi new clothes, new quarters, a proper sword to replace the needle, though Issun-boshi kept the needle too, tucked in his belt, where only he knew it was. In the months that followed, Issun-boshi served Lord Sanjo with the same quiet diligence he always had, the same precision, the same reliability, the same ability to find what was lost, to solve what seemed unsolvable, to move through the world with a quality of attention that larger people often lacked. His size had changed. He had not. He wrote to his parents a longer letter than usual. In his new, larger handwriting, he told them what had happened. He told them he was well. He told them he was coming home. Part 14. The Return. He left in the spring. Lord Sanjo gave him a horse, a proper one this time. Issun-boshi sat on it with the same matter-of-fact composure with which he had once sat in a lacquered bowl. The road west was familiar, though he was seeing it from a different height now. He noticed things he had missed before. Details visible from above that had been invisible at ground level. He noticed, too, the things he had seen before and could no longer see. The particular beauty of a dewdrop from close up. The way the grass looked from within it. The details of a world that most people never saw. He kept them. Those memories. The world as seen from 1 inch. He would not trade them. He reached his village on a morning in late spring. The mountains were green. The fields were bright with new growth. The air smelled of earth and rain and something flowering. He walked through the village slowly. People stared. He kept walking. He reached the small house at the edge of the village. His father was in the garden. He looked up at the sound of footsteps. He looked at the young man standing at his gate. For a long moment he didn't move. Then something shifted in his face. He knew. Parents always know. He crossed the garden quickly for a man his age. Issun-boshi met him at the gate. His father put his arms around him and held on. No words, just that. His mother appeared in the doorway. She saw them. She sat down very suddenly on the step. Then she stood back up and came toward them, and the three of them stood together in the spring morning for a long time. Part 15. After. He stayed, not forever. He went back to the capital. He served Lord Sanjo for many more years. He married, eventually, a quiet woman who reminded him a little of Princess Renko, and built a life. But he came back to his village often. Every spring, if he could, he would sit with his parents in the garden, his father, older now, moving slowly, his mother, smaller than he remembered, her hair completely white. He would tell them stories of the capital. They would tell him stories of the village. The same small, ordinary stories that have always been told. He would eat his mother's cooking, sleep in his old bed, which was now, of course, far too small. He would lie on it anyway, feet hanging off the end, and look up at the ceiling he had stared at for so many years from a very different angle. He kept the needle all his life in a small lacquered box beside his bed. He never forgot what it had taught him. That being small is not the same as being less, that the world looks different from different heights, and all of those different ways of looking have their own particular truth. That courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what needs to be done while your hands shake. That the prayers of those who love you reach places you cannot see and find you, wherever you are. Part 16. Outro. The story is over now, but somewhere, on a river somewhere, a small bowl is moving through the water. A chopstick paddle, a needle sword, a world that is very large, and one small person moving through it with purpose. Sleep now. Let the river carry you. Shh.